It's better than that.
How so?
She took a picture of herself at the ballot drop box.
You want to know what Democratic dominance looks like? I've lived in Boulder since the mid-'80s. I know what it looks like. This poor woman is in charge of the Boulder Republicans. I don't know how you do that, but what I wanted to talk about was how you knew how to get rid of a Democratic state legislator. So, Theresa Watson, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here with you, John.
Help me understand how Tracey Bernett, state legislator, is no longer a state legislator. And in fact, she had to step down and might have even committed a crime, and you were able to somehow bring all this to light. I found this fascinating, and I'm still not too sure how you did this, so I'm very curious. Tracey Bernett came to office, and she represented what district?
House District 12.
Where is that?
It is Lafayette, Louisville, Superior, Niwot, Lake Valley, everything in between those cities also.
Okay, and that's in Boulder County.
Yep.
All right. So it's in your world. Do you live in her district?
Yes, I live in Louisville.
How long is and she was in that district for?
She was in her first term, so
Okay.
she was halfway through it when the redistricting was drawn. The districts were drawn and redrawn after the census.
This happens every 10 years.
Every 10 years,
Every 10
everybody
years.
knows it's coming. They all anticipate it.
And sometimes people are drawn in their district. Sometimes they find themselves out of their district. And sometimes some people have to leave their office, and sometimes they've got to move if they're going to stay in the office. Tracey Bernett was in her office, in her district, out of her district. What happened after redistricting?
Her home of 30 years with her husband and children was districted out into House District 19 that was currently being held by a Republican. And according to data, it had about a 1.5% Republican lean.
Okay. So she could no longer be in her district. So
Well,
she moved from what? You said District 11? Did I get
12.
that? 12. And now where her home was no longer in 12, it was in 19.
Correct.
And what was a Democratic district, where she obviously won, is now a marginally Republican district, as if anything is a marginally Republican district in Colorado anymore. Well, so poor Tracey had to run, if she wanted to run for something, would have to run in District 19. Okay.
That would make
that
sense
happens.
to us, right?
Yeah, that happens. So she ran in District 19, right?
No.
So she ran in District 19, where she lived, right?
Nope.
All right, so she was in 12, got redistricted, she's in 19, so she ran for District 19.
She decided that she would prefer to move into 12, knowing that her home no longer resided in 12. But she liked being an incumbent, I'm sure, and having the power of being the incumbent candidate for reelection and for a second term. So she decided to
move. There's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
Politicians do this all the time. I don't actually know why, because it's
that
not.
was something I learned this fall, John.
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
Yeah,
I didn't know that they do this all the time.
Well, Hillary Clinton moved to New York to become a senator, and this gig pays like, $30,000 a year, so, but it has a parking space. So she liked being in District 12. It got redrawn, and she was drawn out of it. She's known in District 12. I imagine most of her constituents were still in District 12, so she rented a place, and she and her whole family moved into District 12. She lives in District 12.
Well,
Big deal. People move. It's been
She,
known to
let's
happen.
say that I would call it that she rented an apartment and got a new address, but there was no moving that happened.
What do you mean?
Well, the apartment stayed empty, pretty empty. And so I didn't know anything about this till the summer before the election. So it came to my attention through one person, through another, and it came to me because I'm the chair of the GOP party in Boulder County. So they came to me and
This has got to be
said,
the loneliest job in the world.
it's the best job in the world, John.
I don't believe you, but
You see the smile? There's nowhere to go but up in Boulder County. So
expectations are
and
low.
we have a lot of fun messing with the Democrats.
All right, so Tracey Bernett says she moves, she rents a place,
Yes.
but you find out she doesn't actually live there. Now, if I understand the law correctly, United States congressmen can do that. You don't actually have
That's
to
correct.
live where the people you represent. So you can live in Denver, but the people in the 4th Congressional up in Fort Collins can vote you in. That's a cool thing. But for the state legislature, it's very clear. You must live where you represent. So she says she lives there, but you were suspicious she didn't.
Right.
Let me ask you, did you stalk this woman? Or were you spying? Did you put an air tag on her? What did you do that you find out she doesn't live there? Because my guess is, while there's not a lot to do when you're a Republican in Boulder, because you're not winning a lot of elections, you probably just don't go around and stalk people. I mean, how did you get a sense that
It wasn't my first instinct to go check out the apartment. My first instinct was the person who I heard it through several people.
so somebody
And-
tipped you off?
Yes. So I
Who
was
tipped you
thinking
off? Give me names, or give me an idea.
probably no names, but friends of friends that knew Tracey personally.
Friends of you, or friends of
Tracey, that knew Tracey personally.
Wait. So friends of Tracey,
Friends of friends,
you have mutual friends.
not my friends.
Speak more plainly. People who are friends with Tracey ratted her out to you?
Indirectly, yes.
Really?
Through another person, yes, that knew me better.
So Tracey's spilling the beans to her friends, and
Well,
it
they
gets
know where
around to
she
you.
lives.
Right.
And she admitted that she rented an apartment. And she told people that it was okay because it was legal.
But it's not legal.
Well, if you live there, John, yes, right?
But you have to live there. So
Right.
this is pretty sloppy. It's really arrogant.
It gets worse.
What do you mean it gets worse?
It gets really sloppy.
Well, hang on a second. I'm still trying to digest this one, which is she gets a place, and mind you, I've known parents who have done this in order to get their kids into a better school, because it's terrible if you're in a bad school district and you want to get into a better school, and you'll do anything for your kids. And if you can't afford a house in a good school district, you try to do something. That's for your kids. This seems to be for yourself. And so she says she lives here, and her own friends start talking it up till it filters around. It seems like this is the kind of thing you shouldn't be talking about. But how do you not know that it's going to get out that you're not really living there?
People talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So you hear this, then what?
So I'm hesitant because I'm thinking someone's just messing.
Messing with
They're
you.
just trying to get even with Tracey, or I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know what to think. So I kind of just sit on it for about a week. And then one day I just decided that I would look up her Facebook stuff. Well, let's just well, first of all, I looked up her address, checked out the map, and then I went onto her Facebook.
How did you check the address?
You can go to Boulder County, whatever the land,
Okay.
you know, you look up addresses, get the maps of where people live. Oh, and the redistricting maps themselves were
Right.
very easy to use to look up addresses. So I looked it up. Sure enough, and this is still like, this is crazy. This doesn't make sense. Why would she be doing this? You live in Boulder. We're outnumbered 5-1.
Right.
What do you need to lie for?
Well, also, it's not like in District 12 that some Republican was going to win that seat if she didn't
Like
run.
I said, 5-1.
Yeah. There was I think about when Mike Kaufman kept winning that congressional seat, the 6th congressional, and he was really the only one who could hold on to it, and he held on to it for years. And when that was lost, it was like, it's going to be hard for any Republican to win that seat. If he didn't run.
It's not the same, you're
not the same.
saying?
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
think it's the same in Boulder?
Yeah, I don't think it's the same that she was the only one who could hold on to that seat. All right. So you looked online, and
I started looking at pictures, looking at her Facebook. As a representative, she had a Facebook. So I just started snipping pictures of the home and just trying to figure, and getting a timeline, because you had to have been registered at this due address 1 year prior to the
Right.
election, right? So in 2021, November 2021, she would have I should have started seeing pictures change, right? There
Right.
should be an apartment. So we were looking at the pictures, and guess what was going on in late 21, early 22? A lot of Zoom.
right.
And guess who doesn't blur out her background? So I started collecting the pictures of the Zoom meetings with her in some location. I wasn't sure at the time yet, because I wasn't sure. I've never seen her house. I've never seen the inside. So I just started collecting, getting the information. She was bragging about a tomato bumper crop over the summer, and it was the summer before the election. So now I'm collecting data, putting it in a timeline.
Maybe there's a community garden in her apartment.
I thought there has to be, right? I'll go check. So I did eventually drive by the apartment to get a feel for the location. I live in Louisville, so it was just a little bit from me. And went by, checked it out. And I took a few pictures, because it's just so evident. You're looking at this apartment, and there's a pool in the center, and everyone's around it, and everyone's got plants and trees and little outdoor plants and a table and chairs, and hers has nothing. Zilch. So I start taking pictures of that. And all of the windows are covered. Take pictures of that. Again, remember, I'm collecting data because I don't know for sure. I don't know this woman. I never have met her. So I decide I need some help, because I don't know what to do now with all of this. So I called the chairwoman of the Colorado GOP. She's an attorney. I wanted to see what she might have some advice for me. So we talked, got some other advice about how to handle this. And so I had kind of a deadline. Ballots were about to be printed for the November election. And they said, well, there's different ways to handle this. You can submit the evidence to the Secretary of State. You can take it to the Judicial District 20 of Boulder. You can take it to the DA. And at this time, I had about 5 days to compile and write up my complaint. So I had to hustle. And I spent 5 days. I dropped everything and just worked on this report and got it to the DA Monday, September 19th.
So you brought it to the DA, not the Secretary of State's office.
Oh, I sent it to her too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you said, here's pictures of her in her house from Zoom meetings.
So yeah, I had a lot of things actually, John. I had her voter registration because that's a public record. Had her Louisville
Her voter
address.
registration, I'm assuming, was at the new place.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
But everything else
We
was
had
at
her
her old place.
voting record from the June primary at her apartment at the new address.
So you give it all to the DA. What happens next?
They actually contacted me pretty quickly, maybe within 48 hours, 24 hours. I can't remember the timing exactly, but they said, you have some very compelling evidence, and we'd like to talk to you more about this.
Really? Now, the DA, if I remember, it's Boulder.
Yep.
He's a Democrat.
Yes.
Were you worried that he might go, we'll just keep this to ourselves?
You know what I was worried about was not doing my job. As a chairman of the party, I thought, I can't ignore this. Someone's brought me information, and I need to do something about it. Now, I didn't file as the chairman. I filed as a resident of House District 12. So I filed the complaint as a voter resident of this district. And so that was my first motivation was, I have a job to do. I need to follow through on this, and I don't know what it's going to happen. Yeah, I live in a district, a county that's very Democrat, so I don't know what the DA is going to do with it. I hope, and we had very low expectations. I just wanted I wanted to do my part, my job, and so I handed in the evidence.
What did he do?
They brought me in and asked a lot of questions. They interviewed other people. I actually had someone help me watching the apartment. I just said, hey, he lives in Louisville. I said, hey, would you be willing to go by the apartment once a day just to see if anything changes? Because we've got this small window of time to continue watching and see if anything happens.
Did you stake this place out? Was this like a cop thing? You're there, you got the binoculars and the camera with the long lens, and 15 cups of coffee, and you're there on a stakeout.
It was a little bit easier than that, John.
Were you the guy in the van that said pizza on it, but really it's got tape recorders and?
That would have been fun, yes, but no. He just walked by, noted his time that he walked by, and that nothing had changed, or if there had anything changed, he wrote that down too. But nothing had changed. So he did it for 3 weeks, every day.
And she never came by?
Nothing changed. Nothing changed.
Maybe she was dead. Maybe she was inside. Maybe she needed help. Maybe she fell down and broke her hip.
Because she attended like the Louisville parade for Labor Day, and no, she wasn't.
So what happened next?
So again, they're not really telling me a lot. They're just asking questions, and they interviewed. They asked me for other people to interview, so I gave them the name of the gentleman and the person who gave me the inside scoop at the beginning also. So they interviewed them. And I kept in contact with the investigator, but he really wasn't revealing to me. But he did give me some hints. He would say, we're taking this seriously. You gave us some really compelling evidence, but that's all I can tell you. And so we just waited. And actually what we did was we had members of our party writing to the DA, writing to the newspapers, and
really?
saying, hey, we'd like to see this case be listened to and taken seriously.
The papers
so we had a lot
anything?
of people call and write. Let's see. Hold it. I can't remember who was the first to, that's the other thing. I sent my complaint to multiple newspapers. of course, our wonderful Daily Camera and the Longmont Times, and they're connected, so neither of them wanted anything to do with me or this story. And then the Longmont Leader, they were willing to listen to me and get my side of it.
I would assume once a reporter called Tracey Bernett, she'd be like running over there with, running back to her apartment, making it look like.
She was contacted quite early. Actually, this story wasn't really my initial story. The Colorado Sun published an article in August, and she was one of the featured representatives, legislators, in this article talking about something called open secrets. And the open secret was that there's actually a lot of legislators that don't live in their district but run for them anyways.
Wow.
And they actually had 4, Tracey was the 4th, case last fall that they were actually had complaints against and were going before DAs and judges to settle the problem.
Okay, so how did this wind up? How did it end up from there to her resigning?
On November 3rd, the DA sent out a press release with the charges against Tracey. So,
And these are criminal
and by
charges.
now, John,
These-
my job is getting very busy because there's an election, and I've got election judges and poll watchers, and I've got people, candidates. So I'm now very, very busy, and it's kind of like I know it's still there, but I don't know what's going to happen.
Did it surprise you?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Really? So you didn't see the charges coming? You didn't get tipped off, hey, it's happening?
He sent them to me. The investigator sent me the report, the warrant, and his report the same time that he released it to the press.
What was she charged with?
3 felonies and 2 misdemeanors.
That's pretty serious.
Oh, I was shocked at that.
What are the felonies?
Influencing a public servant, not voting in your district. Remember, I
Right.
had her voting record from the primary,
Right.
right? So her ballot went to a P.O. box, but it was
But if
for that address in that district.
If she filled it out and sent it in, that's voter fraud.
Correct.
Right.
That's right. And I can't remember the 3rd felony offhand here. Okay.
But those are felonies.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I was completely shocked. 3 felonies? Like I knew that there was a misdemeanor in there, but I wasn't sure. And the investigator told me that election laws are difficult to follow.
Election laws are very difficult to get charges on because they're really hard to prove. You need to show that someone has actually voted when they shouldn't have voted. And so, particularly with a lot of mail ballots, you don't know that somebody's mail ballot was a fraudulent one. And so, did somebody really mail that in? Could you prove that they weren't the ones that mailed it in? Here, she obviously mailed it in, and it was mailed to that.
Oh, no, John. It's better than that.
How so?
She took a picture of herself at the ballot drop box now, she was careful not to have her address showing on the envelope, but she had a picture of herself, and it was like 5 days before the election, something like that. So it was dated, posted on her
Facebook
on her social media.
All right, so it's her, she voted, registered to an address where she did not live.
Correct.
All right. How did they know? What was the proof she did not live there? Couldn't it have been that she just ran back to her old place during the day and did her meetings there, but she slept every night?
Well, kudos to the Boulder DA and the investigator because they actually did some amazing investigation of this case. So it came out on November 3rd with their press release and all of their report. They had gotten a warrant to go into the apartment, took pictures, noted what was there and what wasn't there. Well, mostly what was there. I take that back. Just what was there. And the funniest statement they made was the cobwebs on the cabinets. But they noted like what was in the fridge, almost nothing, what was in the freezer, what was in the closet, a mattress on the floor. This is not a woman who's used to her fine living on her very nice home on property in Longmont, living in an apartment, and supposedly still happily married. So remember we were talking about what is the statute? You must live in you must live at the address for 1 year prior to the election, right? Well, there's an actual definition about what that means. It's your main abode.
Right.
And when they are determining someone's legitimate residency to run for an office, they look for things like marital status. Has there been a change? Is the family together still?
Right.
Has she gone through a divorce or have papers, name changes, anything that would, and does she show up and live at that? What abode, which one is the place where you would actually put your head at night?
And by the way, where you sleep matters. They actually count that.
Yes, that really does.
So she resigned.
On the very last day of her first term.
She never showed up for the first day of session.
Correct.
For the new session. That a vacancy committee had to fill in the new one, which is too bad because she ran for this office under false pretenses. She was elected as if she lived there, and so the constituents really didn't have a fair election. We don't know who would have won if who would have won the primary. We don't know who would have won in a general because she lied about this. What's the status of the case? She's been charged with these felonies. Are they still pending?
She has an arraignment coming up on February 10th. And at that time, and we're still, again, remember, I don't get regular, correspondence from the DA's office, so I don't know where they're at and if there's any kind of deal going on. But I would like to know that. I mean, I think we have a right to know if they're going to make a deal with her attorney to lessen charges or drop the charges, or I don't see how they can, honestly, now that it's so public. I don't see how they can drop the cases.
Right.
I don't know what kind of deal you make.
And I can't imagine how she can say she's not guilty. It would be I think it would be a tough thing to say you're not guilty. So I imagine there'll be a plea deal somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah.
Because, I don't think she's going to be doing hard time for this crime.
No.
But also, let me be fair, this is not just a Democrat issue. There are Republicans who are being rumored to have done this issue or done this, living where they don't live. Sometimes it's with a family member someplace else. Sometimes it's at a different house. If you're Jared Polis, you can have several houses around. When he was, I think, shopping for a district to run in, he had his place in Boulder. He had his place in Weld County. I think he had a house in every single district in Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. But not everyone has that kind of wealth. And so maybe you just stay with Cousin Bob while you're out there.
Sure. There were, like I said, there were 4 cases going on. Tracey became the 4th case in the fall. But it came out that there's actually 10 legislators, and this was prior to the election.
Wow.
So, yes, it was, like I said, they call it the open secret. So it's just one of many, I guess, that go on. So now we're looking at, they just had their vacancy committee, and they elected a new legislator to be representative of House District 12.
As a partisan Republican, it must feel very good that you were able to take out a Democratic legislator. Do you feel like her replacement is a better, somewhat slightly more conservative Democrat, or a slightly worse Democrat who's more socialistic?
He's probably definitely more socialistic.
Would it have been better if you had just kept the secret quiet?
I know. You do wonder that, right? You don't know. You don't know what you're going to get. You're hoping, but I couldn't just ignore it. Like I said, it was just something you can't ignore. But I think there is some positive momentum on this, because now that the precedent has been set, that what the Boulder DA did was press charges, right? Charge her with felonies. There's a feel now across the state that maybe you ought to
rethink.
Maybe you ought to live in your district.
Maybe you ought to live in your
Maybe
district.
don't move to Boulder, because Teresa might come after you. So.
All right. Why don't we leave it there? Maybe you ought to live in the district that you represent.
That's right.
Teresa, thank you so much. What an incredible story.
Thank you, John.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.